From the chest-thumping threats that we saw earlier to now a chin-stroking rationale, President Donald Trump seems to be softening his tariff tirade against India. But why the pivot and why now? And the big question on everyone's mind, did India's bold posture at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit force the US to backpedal? Did Prime Minister Narendra Modi just trump Donald? Well, let's quickly rewind to last week. On the 27th of August, Donald Trump slapped a staggering 50% tariff on Indian imports, citing India's surging Russian oil purchases for the punitive extra tariffs. His rant was vintage Donald Trump. He had infamously said just last month, "I don't care what India does with Russia. They can take their dead economies down together for all I care." Fast forward to the 1st to the 3rd of September 2025, post the SCO summit, and the tone has suddenly flipped. Trump now says, "We get along with India very well, but it is a one-sided relationship. They have now offered to cut their tariffs to nothing." And Donald Trump, he's rationalizing US tariffs as a response to India's past high levies up to 200% on items like Harley-Davidson bikes. Now, is this remorse or recalibration? Donald Trump's aides have dismissed the SCO as a performative element, but the optics of Prime Minister Modi cozying up with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin clearly, needless to say, has rattled the White House.
We get along with India very well, but India has, you have to understand, for many years it was a one-sided relationship. Only now, since I came along, and because of the power that we have with tariffs, India was charging us tremendous tariffs, about the highest in the world. They were about the highest in the world, number one. And we therefore weren't doing much business with India, but they were doing business with us because we weren't charging them. Foolishly, we weren't charging them. So they would send in massive, everything they made, they'd send it in, pour it into our country. Therefore, it wouldn't be made here, which is a negative. But we would not send in anything because they were charging us 100% tariffs and.
And here's the thing. India's playbook is pragmatic. It's unflinching and multi-aligned. This echoed in Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal's recent statement where he said that India is in talks with the United States for a bilateral trade agreement. We are open to fair trade agreements but will not negotiate under deadlines and hoping for a November deal. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar recently said that we are two big countries. As I say, the lines are not cut. People are talking to each other and we will see where it goes. So clearly, India is not slamming doors but is keeping the windows open at the same time.
We've had a little bit of a geopolitical issues overtaking trade issues in our negotiations with the United States of America. I do hope things will get back to track soon and we'll conclude a bilateral trade agreement by fall, November or so, as was discussed by our two leaders in February.
By fall, November or so. So the call lines are still open. And at the SCO, Prime Minister Modi signaled more than just economic strength. He proved that New Delhi will not be cornered. The first China visit since border clashes led to ties being reset, and India visibly leveraging its BRICS and SCO links as counterweights to the US pressure. Now, did India's SCO posture lead to the US softening its stand? Well, the summit's timing right after tariffs has signaled India's options, prompting Donald Trump's tone shift from attack to now acknowledgement. And experts noted pushed New Delhi closer to China and Russia, forcing this new recalibration that we see. Finland's president has already warned the West risks of losing the game to the SCO if it fails to engage the global South, which includes India, respectfully.
My message, not only to my European colleagues, but especially to the United States, is that if we don't drive a more cooperative or dignified foreign policy with especially the global South, the likes of India, we're going to lose this game.
Well, so the big question that we're trying to decode tonight, did Prime Minister Modi's display of options at the SCO force Donald Trump to now soften his stand? And joining me here on the broadcast to decode that, Ujjal Singh Bhatia, former ambassador to WTO, Ambassador Deepak Vora, former Indian diplomat. Always a pleasure to have the both of you with us on the broadcast. Shelby Williams, political strategist for the Republican Party, joining us live from Texas, USA, and Adit Kothari, foreign affairs and geopolitical expert, with us on the broadcast. Very warm welcome to you, Adit, and Mr. Shelby Thomas. Ambassador Vora, let me quickly get the snowball rolling with you. Trump's tone has shifted from threats to rationalizations. Last week on Truth Social, it was a disastrous one-sided relationship. This time around, we're getting along real well. And all of this happening after the SCO flex. So was Prime Minister Modi's SCO diplomacy, the meeting with Xi Jinping, with Vladimir Putin, sharing those car rides, cozying up with the two leaders, yet skipping the Beijing parade? People are calling it a master stroke of hedging. But is this moment when the US realizes that India is not going to be looking at arm twisting anymore, and that strategic autonomy, which we've been portraying for the longest time, it has been and is our permanent foreign policy line?
Thank you very much, sir. Always a pleasure to be with you. And may I just say with total sincerity, more sincerity than McDonald Trump has, that I learned from you. So thank you very much for inviting me and all these other distinguished panelists. Let's begin by stating a few facts. First, the turbulence in Bharat-USA relations is increasing by the day. A power-hungry narcissist is destroying his own vision. Sir, may I just remind you very quickly that the unfortunate Deputy Prime Minister and Defense Minister of Australia was in the US, and the fellow posted a picture of him in the office of Vice President J.D. Vance and said the Defense Secretary of the US was there. Promptly the Pentagon said, oh, no, this guy came begging, knocked on the door and barged in and took a photograph. You say this about the Deputy Prime Minister of an ally, Australia, and you think the Australians are going to take this lying down? No, just very recently, he has tried to mess around with everybody. In the process, you've seen what happened at the SCO summit. Sir, the SCO summit is not anti-American. It was non-American. We were looking for alternatives, and we've shown it to them that you are not the only player in the world. You may be the king of the universe in your own mind, but there are others also, and we have the option. I have received several messages from my own WhatsApp group, from the United States, and I see we have a guest from America. Welcome, sir. I've received so many messages from your former ambassadors, from former generals, and others who are part of my group, saying, well done, India, you've taught this guy a lesson, because these shows of dominance, this rejection of the notion of partnership, this display of no interest in friendships, this is not America, sir. This is one man's vision, this idea of dominating the world. It doesn't work in 2025. I mean, what was it? The end of history, Francis Fukuyama, who was my teacher once upon a time, and the last man when the Soviet Union collapsed. Well, history is being written today. It's not the end of history. It's the beginning of a new history. So Mr. Trump, McDonald Trump, whatever his name is, please understand that you may be very brave, you're the best country in the world, I have no doubt, I've lived there. I love the United States. But this kind of behavior for a nation of 140 crore, 1.4 billion is not acceptable. And you might be the baron of business, but you're dealing with the Nawab of negotiation, a man called Narendra Modi, who's from Gujarat, by the way. Business is in their genes. So I'm just surprised that he thinks he can get away with whatever he's doing. It's not going to happen. And every visit to the Donald Trump White House is almost guaranteed for its weirdness. We saw that with the Mad Mullah from Pakistan. It's whatever is happening, America seems to have registered, seems to have internalized the message that we pushed India too far. Now it's time to walk back.
All right, Mr. Shelby Williams, my apologies for misquoting your name there. I've been watching that Birmingham show for a long time, and I'm not going to no more faux pas with names. My apologies, Mr. Williams. But let me get this started. You heard the ambassador earlier on. Trump's first called India's economy a disaster. He said, both these nations, Russia and India, can take their dead economies down the drain. And now there's a recalibration. He says we get along very well. Now, from your vantage point in the United States, is this really a recalibration? If yes, what's driving this recalibration? Is this domestic politics or geopolitical compulsions? Was it the SCO flex? Were people in the United States worried, or have they been talking about the SCO flex with the three leaders?
Well, thank you very much for having me back on your program, and no worries at all about my name. I don't think it's necessarily a recalibration. I was on News9 a couple of weeks ago talking about how President Trump, time after time, in this administration and his prior administration, would go in strong with another nation. North Korea was a great example, and see where the pressure points were, see how they would react. And a couple of weeks ago, when Prime Minister Modi announced the economic reforms internally, I thought was a masterstroke. I thought that was great, and I thought it was overdue for India anyway. And that showed President Trump partially where India stood, and then in the SCO talks, that showed him further where Prime Minister Modi was willing to go. And as I said a couple of weeks ago, once he figures out the pressure points, and once there's movement, then Trump traditionally has softened his approach. So I think this was always going to happen. We just didn't know what the catalyst was going to be. Now, I think their caution is warranted because both Russia and China are geopolitical opponents of the United States. And so I don't think we can approach a future in which we pretend that they are allies or friends of friends. And we have to be very careful with both of them because they do wish harm on the United States. But India has been an important ally for the United States for a very long time. And I believe President Trump wants India to continue to be an ally, which is reflected in his latest comments. And I think that's to the best interest. And as you said, engaging our allies in the Southern Hemisphere, which is not only India, but includes Brazil. And that will ultimately lead to stronger economic ties between all of our nations. And what President Trump and the United States are looking for, further isolation of Russia especially, but hedging China's increasing global economic power.
But at the same point in time, because if I did not hear you wrong, you said it's been it was long due, these tariffs coming from the United States.
No, not the tariffs. Not the tariffs. The internal economic reforms that Prime Minister Modi announced a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
not the tariffs.
Do the U.S. policymakers, Mr. Williams, do they really grasp India's message from the SCO that New Delhi does have other options if Washington pushes too hard? And these pressure points that you've been talking about, could you elaborate on them? If Donald Trump really has assessed India's pressure points and he's now softening his tirade, Piyush Goyal earlier said, the union minister here back at home, that by fall November we could be looking at a bilateral agreement when it comes to trade. What are these pressure points, and do the U.S. policymakers really grasp India's larger message from the SCO?
I think they do, in reverse order. I think they do understand the implications of Prime Minister Modi's meetings and discussions in the SCO. Now, as far as the pressure points, whenever President Trump has done this, come in hard, come in strong with another country, he's looking to see how they react. Prime Minister Modi reacted first with the internal economic reforms within India. That's what I meant was overdue and was a great idea. And it was a strong message to say, we can handle ourselves. Now, Prime Minister Modi going and speaking further with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, that also is a pressure point. So China does way more business into India than India does into China. And that also is a very one-sided relationship in the opposite direction from India's economic relationship with the U.S. And it signals both to Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin that India needs China more than China needs India. And that's where the U.S. and Donald Trump has to be very careful that they're not driving India further into the arms of China and Russia, as has appeared to be the case, and maybe it is the case.
That is the case, and which is why India also needs to tread carefully. I will go across the board once, and of course, the ambassador on the other side can help us understand what happens to this alliance of convenience. People are now writing opinion pieces whether can we truly trust China and Russia. But with us on the broadcast, Ujjwal Singh Bhatia, former ambassador to WTO. Many thanks for patiently waiting, sir. Sir, from a WTO standpoint, how do you assess Donald Trump's claim that India has the highest tariffs in the world? Help us understand some numbers, help the viewers understand, substantiate or dispel Donald Trump's claim here.
I think Mr. Trump is plain wrong, because all these tariffs India has are the results of successive rounds of negotiations from 1947, 48 onwards. And these are multilaterally agreed tariffs, which are bound in the WTO. And for somebody to come up and suddenly say these are absolutely wrong and they are very high, I think that doesn't make much sense. I also believe that we are no longer in just a trade negotiation with the United States. It started off as a trade negotiation, but it has morphed into something much bigger.
Then, sir, my apologies for interjecting. What do you make of Piyush Goyal's statement where he says the door is not completely shut? By fall, November, we could be looking at a trade deal?
Yes, indeed. The door was never shut. Two great nations like India and United States never closed all their doors to each other. There will always be differences, and there will always be channels for negotiation, channels for talking to each other. And I think that is what is happening, that Mr. Trump came in with both arms swinging to examine, to test the pressure points with India, as shall be pointed out. Now he realizes where India stands. I think this has been a remarkable thing, that India has made its red lines clear to Mr. Trump. And these red lines are very, and Russian oil is not one of them. I think it is just a negotiation tactic from the United States rather than a deal breaker. So we are in a much broader negotiation, and I think the steps that India has taken over the last few days, including Mr. Modi's visit to Tokyo and to Tianjin, have created a sort of a new balance in the relationship. Earlier, it was a very asymmetrical negotiation, where the United States was telling India...
Earlier, Mr. Shelby Williams was talking about the pressure points that Donald Trump tries to assess. How do you think we've tackled those pressure points? Like you just mentioned, those red lines when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to the MSMEs. I think we've been, safeguarding those particular sectors. It's a political constituency for the Prime Minister as well. So those pressure points, how have we dealt with them so far?
I think we've dealt with them very, very well, because it is important that the negotiator on the other side knows exactly where you stand, where you can negotiate, where you can compromise, and where you cannot. And I think this is the positive outcome of this standoff that we are witnessing, that now both sides understand each other much better. Now, I think Mr. Piyush Goyal talked about November. And I think the message he's sending is, we're not in a hurry. We're not in a hurry because we are talking, as I said, of something broader than just a trade negotiation. This discussions with the United States is going to set the stage for the relationship between India and the United States for the future across several sectors, whether it is strategic, whether it is technological, whether it is scientific, whether it is defense related. So a large number of issues are going to get sorted out once we have a deal, and I'm sure we will have a deal.
All right, so we will have a deal. Donald Trump seems to be a little hurt. It's a prestige point. Opinion pieces also saying that, he feels like he's been cheated. And he always quotes the 200% tariffs on Harley Davidsons. And that doesn't sit quite right with me because, you don't see a lot of Harley Davidson out on the road. Maybe next time the US president is here, he can lead the official convoy. We'll make him sit on a Harley Davidson. But Adit Kothari, foreign affairs and geopolitical expert with us on the broadcast. Adit, what did you make of whatever happened in Tianjin? Prime Minister Modi showcasing that he is not at a loss when it comes to options. But then today you had that mega military parade as well. Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, all those China-friendly nations out there, 32 of them, and mega military might on display. But then India gives the parade a miss. People are calling it a master stroke. How are you looking at those developments? Do you see that it's almost as if Washington has now realized that India is not going to get cornered anymore?
Thanks for having me, Kabir. I think from Prime Minister Modi's perspective, I think it was really smartly played. He attended the SCO summit. He had a trade reset with China. He deepened his relationships with China, with Russia, and then he returned, skipping the military parade in Beijing, basically sending out a message to his Japanese counterparts that I am not going to be hurting our relationships at the cost of attending the Beijing military the military show. So this actually leaves a lot of space for negotiations with both Washington and Brussels, and it also demonstrates that India is not part of any certain bloc. There is no sense of anti-Americanism. There is no Sinocentrism within India's foreign diplomacy. It's that of multi-alignment, and somewhere or the other, I think the self-inflicted wound that President Trump has caused himself has opened a wider door to sort of multipolarity, and that is the consequence of his trade tariffs. All of these organization and groupings which were basically on paper have suddenly seemed activated. They may not have translated to direct actions as of now. I mean, even if you look at the SCO in general, yes, Prime Minister Modi and Xi have reset trade ties. They're looking at more people to people connections.
Yep.
Direct flights are now going to be opening up. Border talks are going to be resuming. There's a whole panel going to be sitting down to review the border skirmishes and hopefully close it out by 2027. So all of those are in the domain, but let us see how much of it is actually getting action on the ground. But at least it's a Kickstarter. At least President Trump's tariff tantrums have caused all of these ripple effects where, it's brought all of these world leaders together to think about, okay, we have to talk about the US hegemony, and we need to talk about how do we actually mitigate that massive risk looming over our heads. Kabir.
Ambassador Vora, Aditya says that at least it's a Kickstarter. I'm going to come back to that question that I prompted earlier. Allies' inconvenience. Is that a probable thing here? Can India really trust Russia and China? What does history tell us? What does legacy tell us? Is this purely transactional? Is there a message to the United States, a larger message at play? But the bottom line here being, can we really trust China and Russia?
Let me put it to you very bluntly. I've served in the post-Soviet space, ambassador in 4 countries. We can trust them blindly. No question about it. They've never sanctioned us. The United States always has. China, I don't trust. I was orphaned in 1962. My family was. I don't trust these guys. Well, we compartmentalize our relationship. One is a political relationship. We don't like them. But then on economic matters and so on, they are a very large trading partner. We'll continue to trade. They've been saying that we'll buy more from you, etc. The 3 issues that concern us are our core interests. What is it, sir? It's terror, it's territory, and it's trade. As far as terror is concerned, listen to what I'm saying. I've just returned from Leh. I was stuck for 4 days there because the airports were closed. And in the next building to where I was staying was a person, you might have heard his name, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I sat at His Holiness's feet and listened. And I understood what he was saying. He is referred to as an international terrorist by our buddy Ting Tong or Ping Ping or whatever the fellow's name is in China. Whereas this character in Pakistan who goes around blowing up half the world is called a revered Islamic scholar by the Chinese. You think I'll trust these guys? He'll turn around. He's got that fool marshal over there also participating in the parade while the Pakistani Prime Minister is waiting outside eating whatever chips are served in China. And this fellow is in the parade. This is the kind of relationship, and they welcome him to the White House. No. If there is a question of trust, I trust the Russians much more than I would today. I love the United States, a great country, freedom, democracy, and all these values. But my values are my vital interests. And my vital interests have been hurt by the United States with sanctions, with this, that, and whatever reasons. I'm not getting into a good thing or a bad thing, but I feel hurt. And so today, if we are negotiating a deal, and Piyush Goyal, our minister, who's brilliant, says that we will have a deal, as Ambassador WTO has said, it's a much wider thing that we are now looking at. Buddy, don't hurt me, and I won't hurt you. It's a negotiation of equals. We're not your servants. The other guy might be. We are not. Period.
Last week, it was a disastrous relationship, and just a couple of days later, we're getting along. But like, Shelby Williams put it, he tries to assess the pressure points and then softens his stand. But with Europe's Alex Stubbs now warning the West about losing the global South, how is this message, how do you think this message is being received in the White House, Shelby?
I think it was anticipated, as we've discussed, and I fully understand how when India's vital interests are hurt, India is going to react and feel as you do. And I think Prime Minister Modi has done a very good job in at least showing that India has alternatives. And I think his response to the military parade was good as well because of the border clash that India had with China just a few years ago. I know that sting has not gone away, nor has the threat from China, which is ultimately what we need to be looking at. And I think you were correct as well, Ambassador, I think, when you said that we're seeing more than a trade agreement emerge. We're seeing a realignment of geopolitical powers on the global stage. And what we as Americans have to be cautious of with China is not only their increasing economic influence, but the communist ideology that their government is founded on. And we have a many decades old mission of trying to inhibit the spread of that ideology globally, for good reason. My own wife is from Russia and grew up in the Soviet Union. And so we're familiar with the threat firsthand of communist ideology. So I think you're right. I mean, you don't trust China. They do engage in relationships of convenience, but the softening of the stance now and seeing Prime Minister Modi meet with Xi Jinping, I think was, if not anticipated, it was known as a possibility. And it was part of assessing how Prime Minister Modi would respond. And Prime Minister Modi is a very strong leader, and President Trump respects.
I think that's the operative bit coming from Shelby. I think we can leave it there. Prime Minister Modi's powerful stance. But Shelby, many thanks for that personal anecdote and help us understand. So massive trust deficit when Russia and China stand on the Libra scales. But one thing is for certain, SCO, we showed the world that we have more options. Everybody's trying to weigh in what's best for them. Everybody is walking on eggshells. But let's hope that good sense prevails, and by fall November, just like Piyush Goyal said, we have a trade agreement in place. On that note, many thanks to all my panelists, Ambassador Vora, Ambassador Bhatia, Shelby Williams, and Adit Kothari. That's all the time we have for you in Your Interest. Many thanks for watching.